Approximately 1 in 4 people in the UK will experience a mental health problem each year. One of the largest sectors that is overlooked is young black males. Evidence shows that black men are far more likely than others to be diagnosed with severe mental health problems. Black males are also far more likely to be sectioned under the Mental Health Act. According to mentalhealth.org.uk, the proportion of young people aged between 15 and 16 who reported feeling anxious or depressed doubled between the mid-1980s and the mid-2000s.
However, evidence also shows that up until the age of 11 years old, black boys' mental health isn't poorer than other people their age.
So, what happens to these boys from this age? We spoke to Jay, here played by an actor, who told us about his mental health journey.
So I grew up with a father, me and my mother. At first I lived at my nan's with my mother, and she eventually managed to get a place in South London. And I was 4 years of age when I moved in with my mother. Me and my mother moved into a house and, grew up pretty poor. Sometimes I'd go hungry, I'd go without a few meals. Central heating wasn't on, the house would be freezing, sleep on a mattress. I had bin bags for curtains.
The urgency for this focused attention was driven by my awareness of we have nearly a third of the population that comes from these communities, but all of the outcomes, be that education, be that health, be that mental health, be that around access to employment, housing, homelessness, actually the level of poor outcomes in these areas is well disproportionately wrong.
My mother had a lot of boyfriends, obviously not all in one time, separate time, but I went through a lot of domestic abuse because of her poor choice of men. A lot of the time I'd see my mum get verbally abused by, her boyfriends back then. As the years went on, the worse it got. My mother had a certain boyfriend that took the domestic violence that I saw since I was a small boy to the next level. I started seeing, very violent actions towards my mum. All of that happened, from when I was 11 till I was 15.
We as a community have a part to play in how we raise our young black men. We need to stop teaching men that being vulnerable is a sign of weakness. We need to stop teaching our men that the only power that they can obtain is the power of strength.
A lot of the time I was very angry, and I'd take it out on teachers, on students and on the streets. In terms of school, it was pretty grim. I had a group of friends, all of us constantly always getting excluded, coming into school high, drunk, all types of nonsense you got, and then, started reverting out in the streets, getting arrested, etc., etc. This was all between, I'd say, when it started getting really bad, year 8, year 9 and year 10. I got sent to the Peru, because at that point, most of the friends I was with all got permanently excluded, and a lot of them joined gangs.
I think I spent way too much time when I was young holding in things that I was going through and suppressing emotions that I was feeling, and it didn't benefit me. I had a lot of anger management issues when I was young. I had to go to anger management counselling. I was exploding in ways that were illogical.
In school I was calm, but outside of school, I was still doing robberies, drugs, etc. You know, I was only 16, 17. Well, throughout my whole life, I've been suffering from mental health, but I didn't really realize until I'd say I was about late 17s or early 18s. I realized, you know, I'm not happy, I'm always angry, you know, I'm very depressed. And throughout the latter years, I started suffering from PTSD because I couldn't sleep, you know, constant flashbacks to certain things I've gone through kept popping in my head. I got myself checked by a psychiatrist, being diagnosed with PTSD, depression and anxiety. It's not there and then that's the problem, it's the after that you have to deal with, the mental implications that leave you to suffer after. I've always said I'd rather suffer physically than mentally. And dealing with mental health is not easy because a lot of people don't understand. If you try to speak to somebody about your problems, they've never suffered mental health themselves, they'll just say, get over it, or they might say you're a bit, you know, crazy or whatnot, and it can get extremely frustrating because it's a lonely road.
For young black men, there are stigmas, cultural pressures, and inbuilt stressors that can contribute to anxiety and depression and make it harder to articulate these issues.
The stigma of actually seeking help, so that prevents them from being seen in the first place.
When I first realised, I was always thinking to myself, I'm crazy, or I'm not like normal people, I'm this and that.
But also there's a stigma about, in our community, we don't have time for sorrow, we don't have time for pain, we don't have time to not be fast-paced. We don't have time to think about our mental health because of the oppression that it is that we felt for so long that we always have to go, go, go.
You know, I'm so used to holding everything with myself, but there's only so much somebody can hold until they break, because it's like if you carry all your problems on your back, it's like you're walking a long road, and eventually, you know, day by day, you're closer and closer to falling from all that weight.
In a lot of our environments that we're from, it's not encouraged for us to be open about emotional issues. It's very much expected of you to be firm at all times. Like, I'm reflecting on my own upbringing, like it's almost like emotions weren't allowed.
The stigma is a lot less than it used to be, and people, you know, there's a lot of services that do have an open door policy to people that are suffering with mental health issues, and people do have a better understanding of it.
As much as it's still a stigma in our community, I would say there has been a major shift, and what we're going to see in the next 5 years is a greater shift, that the stigma of mental health in our community is going to like drop down a bit because of the young people standing up, talking about their mental health, whether that's young black men or young black women. They're confidently being able to step into their light and talk about their mental health.
So what are the barriers for young black males to seek help?
I think it's more so that the current mental health system isn't tailored to meet the needs of black people or black males.
So nobody likes mentioning it, but of course colour does play a part. Sometimes services are overpopulated because there's a huge gap right now in terms of the increase of young black males especially trying to access service has increased due to a lot of things happening, i.e. violence. There's a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder that's undiagnosed in the community, that when it does reach a service like CAMHS, it may be too late because of the age of the young people that CAMHS also have to see.
So CAMHS is Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services. Unfortunately, the gaps for young black males are early intervention, and they end up being picked up by the criminal justice system as opposed to being dealt with specifically by mental health services.
Early intervention is extremely important, and I think there's always room for schools and educators to improve with their interventions. I think workshops would be a great place to start with young people. Workshops on mental health awareness, just so young people are actually aware of what mental health is, so they're able to identify their symptoms an earlier stage. I think that's one of the difficulties with the system. It's actually more reactive than preventative. In-school counsellors, in-school therapists as well, so a hub within the school system itself, I think that would be ideal. But also the referral process as well would be helped if educators and school teachers were actually trained thoroughly to be able to identify symptoms and triggers.
The government are identifying gaps in the service, and they are investing a lot in early intervention. So I think they're hitting schools, they're hitting your GPs, they're hitting families, health visitors. So if there's anything that, you know, parents, families, young people, if you start seeing things from young, you know, bring it up and, you know, go to speak to professionals that are in, you know, the organisations that you currently engage in, and, you know, speak to them from early, and they can get the help you need from an early age.
It's hugely important for young black males to see representatives of themselves that they can speak to when accessing support.
And I fully advise them doing that, but make sure the person you're speaking to is someone you understand and someone who is compassionate with you and about you.
And sometimes you find there's an openness.
There's a lot of barriers that are broken down. It's like, oh, you look like me. That's one barrier that is broken down. We may be from different countries or different areas, but you look like me. And the one thing that bounds us is our skin color. Whether you're light skin, dark skin, you're still black. This person may understand my struggle, my mum's struggle, my auntie, my uncle. This person relates in some sort of way. And so it's not gonna feel scary to open up and talk about the things that they wanna talk about, because they're not gonna feel judged.
My friend told me, she was just like, you need to get help. I was like, what do you mean I need to get help? I'm fine. Like, no, you're not fine, because at one point I was barely coming out of the house and whatnot. She was just like, you look so depressed, like you need to do something. My mother was saying that as well, and at first I was always in denial.
When I do treat black males, there's sometimes a lack of awareness of what their difficulties are, and sometimes there's resistance to engage.
No, but then I realised, I sat back and I self-reflected, and I was just like, I did a bit of research as well, and I was like, a lot of the ways I'm acting is ways of people that suffer from mental health. And so I started to get therapy and whatnot. Went to my GP, I was reaching a breaking point at that point, you know, I held everything by myself, and I was, you know, I'm 19 now, at the time I was 18, 17.
I think the advice that I would give to a young person who's struggling with mental health is literally be honest. Do not hold it in.
It's just find someone to talk to.
Talking about mental health in the community is needed.
It took me a long time to deal with it in ways that wouldn't put my future in jeopardy, but like, it's a thing of there's beauty in suffering. Once you realise how far you've come from your pain, it will give you great satisfaction, and there's nothing better than being healed from your problems.
Socialize Media.